Okay, we will be moving on to the second talk in this session now. So this paper is, give me 1 second. This paper is on analyzing, detecting, and removing gender stereotyping from Bollywood movies. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Taneea.
I just need a second to set this up. So after that amazing talk, mine is going to be a pretty simple one. So I'm going to start with the story. I'm Taneea, by the way. I'm going to start with the story and hopefully end with the revolution. To start with, when I was younger, I used to love reading books, but my sister didn't read much. So my parents, typical parents, they're like, why can't you be like your elder sister? Why can't you read more? Why can't you'll be better at reading, you'll know more things about you. And she said, why do I have to read books? I can just watch movies, right? And my parents' reaction was like, what, movies? And she just went like, yeah, there's a lot to learn from movies, and they're amazing. They're definitely more fun than reading books. So that struck a note with me. How many people actually felt that way? How many people actually preferred watching movies over reading books? When I researched into this, I found studies that showed 2/3 of the world's population was more interested in watching movies than reading books. Movies now seem very important if more than half the world was watching them. So to delve a little deeper into the kind of people watching movies, I found something very interesting, which is that a little more than half the population, 53% to be exact, of the population watching movies was women. Now, after movies, women and their connection to movies seem very important. And to kind of get into, I have to dig. So I'm a problem solver. So I went again, looked at studies, and kind of found the kind of women that play roles in our movies. For example, Dorothy in Wizard of Oz, 1939. She was an iconic female who reached her goals by making friends along the way and pretty much saved the world and ended up with a happy ending by being a leader. Second example, Princess Leia in Star Wars. She was a really cool princess, leader of the rebellion, has the task force, etc. But do you kind of feel that the princess mostly just waits around to hand a medal to Luke at the end of it? To look at examples closer to my home, India, we should look at the data set that we use to analyze Bollywood movies. Our data set consists of more than 4,000 movies spanning the 1970 to 2017 time period. There were over 5,000 female cast members and over 9,000 male cast members. We also analyzed 13 movie scripts, 13 because that's the only number of Bollywood movie scripts available for free, 880 movie trailers. To give you an example, let's look at a movie plot of the movie Kaho Na Pyar Hai, which is This Is Love translated. Rohit is an inspiring singer who works as a salesman in a car showroom run by Malik. One day he meets Sonia Saxena, daughter of Mr. Saxena, when he goes to deliver a car to her home as her birthday present. Now what's interesting, there are 3 interesting things here. 1, the first male Rohit is introduced with an occupation and an aspiration. The second male Malik is introduced as a business owner. What's even more interesting is that the female is introduced with no occupation or aspiration. In fact, the introduction itself is dependent on another male, daughter of Mr. Saxena. So this was a really old movie, 1990s, things should change in the 21st century, right? So let's take an example which was of a movie which was like released a couple of years ago, Sultan. I don't know how many of you watched it. So the female protagonist, Arfa, is a state-level wrestler. She's been training all her life, and she hopes to win the Olympic gold medal. Then comes Sultan, who's a typical Indian lover boy. He ends up falling in love with Arfa, but Arfa turns him down because he does not measure up to her aspirations or standards, etc. That's fair, right? Like, women can turn men down. But what happens is that Sultan, in order to prove his worth to Arfa, turns from this to this in a matter of 30 days. What happens next is even funnier because he then gets an apology from Arfa, he marries her, and together they win tournament after tournament after tournament. Only Arfa's been training for this all her life. But Sultan has managed to do it only in a matter of 60 days. Okay, plot twist. And some good news. Both of them are selected for the Olympics. But plot twist, Arfa finds out that she's pregnant. She decides to carry the baby and help Sultan achieve the dream that she dedicated her life to. Essentially ending the movie with this. Now, I don't have anything against this movie or the characters or the choices the characters made in it. But the point remains that when we show movies like Kaho Na Pyar Hai and Sultan, it is no wonder that our study reveals that men are described with adjectives like strong and wealthy, while females are reduced to be described with adjectives like beautiful, attractive, and pregnant. Or that men tend to do everything under the sun, kill, beat, shoot, propose, while females, while the verb are limited, the most common one is also marries. Now, let's look at a fun fact. Did you know that the year this movie came out, there was a 60% increase in female solo travel? Or that the years Brave and Hunger Games came out, female participation in archery went up by 105%. In fact, studies show that movies not only affect your hobbies, they affect the way of life, the way that you perceive yourself and others around you. They affect your relationships, even your mental health, and definitely your sense of identity. So when we show in our movies males with higher number of and higher level of occupations like police officer or lawyer, while females are reduced to hold secretarial positions, it affects us. It affects all of us. In fact, this is not all. According to an article on BuzzFeed, Aditi Singh Sharma, a female playback singer, was quoted saying, if a movie has 7 songs, 97% of the time, 5 songs will be sung by males. Similarly with on-screen time, which is much higher for males than females in movie trailers. The truth is that we can't even fully understand this, the analysis of this data, because this is all we've known. Movies and Indian cinema and modern cinema are not frivolous. They are the way that we experience life. They're the way that we perceive ourselves and others around us. They're the way to develop empathy for people who have experiences different than our own. So when we see in these movies that show only one thought, only one perspective, neglecting almost half the population. Not that this perspective isn't important, but don't you think the world would be a better place for all if all the stories were told? Now that I've got you all depressed, I would like to ask another question, which is, what do we do about it? What do we do about, this one thought that's being portrayed over and over and over again, this one perspective, and pretty much just one gender? We fix it with a revolution. But before I can get into that, I have two pieces of very important and very good news for you. The first is, there are female-centric Bollywood movies. Yay. Our study reveals that while most movies are male-centric, no surprise there, our system detected over 30 movies in the last 3 years which were centered around females. The second good news is, the number of such movies is on the rise. Our study reveals that the percentage of female-centric movies has been increasing over the years, and we also know that the bias has been reducing every year. While this is nowhere near neutral, this trend is definitely encouraging. We have been fortunate enough to start a conversation about this data and our analysis through different mediums like articles on BuzzFeed or LiveMint or Scroll and more. But that's not where it ends. That's not all. We have just managed to identify and bring to light the glaring problem of underrepresentation of women in Bollywood movies. But to elaborate, let me just wind up our whole study into a 4-point plan, which is a revolution, and which every woman, man, and everybody around the world will be able to contribute to, and I sincerely hope that you do. So, my 4-point plan. Step number 1, watch movies. Isn't this a good revolution? Watch movies. Watch movies that show all kinds of stories, not just one. Watch movies that show stories from women, men, people of color, different castes, different races. Step number 2, identify and recognize when there's bias in a movie. Identify and recognize what the women are doing in these movies. Are they getting to do cool stuff and achieve their dreams, or are they just there to provide mental support to a man? Third, ask questions and help spread the word. Every one of us can contribute. If you're a student, research. If you're a journalist, interview filmmakers and actors and ask them why it is so. If you're a writer, write about what you see, write about the bias that you see. Step number 4, build and propose solutions. Now, this is the most important point, which cannot be explained very easily, so I will just give you an example. My team, we code. So what we're trying to do now is remove the bias from these movies by saying that the plot remains exactly the same minus the bias. "2018 declared as Women Empowerment Year. We're celebrating 100 years of women being able to vote. So on this day, in this year, I would like all of you to pledge to please help contribute into this revolution. Because let me clarify, equality for women does not mean less equality for men. Robots are going to steal our jobs equally. But equality for women in movies helps a little boy empathize with female characters and not just the male characters. And it definitely helps a little girl who might not have a role model in real life to see women going out and achieving their dreams and doing whatever they wished for. And to me, that is very important. Finally, I would like to leave you with this quote: culture does not make people, people make culture. Thank you.
Hello. Thanks for the great talk. I'm just curious if you can talk about your methods a little bit more. So, especially how you're analyzing what makes something female-centric or biased, given that you're only looking at 18 scripts versus how did the scripts compare
the
to that?
scripts are only 13, but we analyzed over 4,000 movies, Wikipedia plots, with over 5,000 female characters and over 9,000 male characters. So I mentioned the plots. The centrality of each character is defined by making a knowledge graph of each cast member in a movie, and then using a lot of word embeddings and word2vec to find how close each node is to that character.
And how did you define who is male and who is female in the characters?
So we used IBM software to determine the gender of each cast member. We also eliminated the cast members that we could not find a definite gender for. Okay. So we only considered cast members that we could find a definite gender for.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, thank you for an amazing talk. My question, I guess it relates to our paper with Joy. Have you thought about, so we're talking about intersectionality, right? So have you thought about skin tone? Because I guess I've watched a lot of Bollywood movies, and I know that it is very, very biased towards lighter skinned actors, and I've even heard that they even have actors from Afghanistan because they're lighter skinned and things like this. And Joy was looking at the Indian parliament, and it was all lighter skin, right, Joy? You were saying 12% women representation, all lighter skin. So I'm just wondering if that.
Well, there's a specific type 4 for India, but it gets improved, but lighter skin overall.
So I was just wondering if you're thinking about having this type of intersectionality as well, because we want to think about all women, right? So caste, geographic location, etc. Thanks.
So to be honest, first, I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunate, but mostly the variation in skin color in India is pretty low. We're all brown. But definitely that is an extension that we can think about. We're not working on it as of now, but maybe.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm not a Bollywood movie aficionado, and I was wondering if you could recommend a few female-centric for those of us who want to get, what movies would you recommend for us to get into it, to watch some inspiring tales? Okay, any in particular?
I have 8 examples right here. Okay. Catch me after the talk, and I will give you 22
and then,
more.
Follow-up question. I was just curious if, just for some context of this, in Hollywood is grappling with this the Time's Up campaign. Gender is a really forefront in the conversation right now. Is that conversation happening in Bollywood right now, or?
I'm sorry, what conversation?
Sorry, the Weinstein fallout, the Time's Up campaign, bringing attention to the lack of female directors and lower screen time for women, lack of scripts written by women, all that stuff. Is it really at the forefront of conversation in Hollywood right now? And I was just curious in Bollywood if that same conversation is going on.
Like I said, conversation has started. There definitely is conversation. In fact, the latest movie, I don't know if you've heard, but Padmavat had the leading actress who was paid higher than her male, the male actors that were acting in the film. So definitely a step forward. But on the other hand, I've also met, some journalists and people who work in the media who have tried to take this up with female directors and, female songwriters and try to, but those sort of campaigns just seem to fall out. I don't know why. The conversation is definitely not at the forefront, but it is there. That's all for questions. Thank you.
Oh.